Good morning and welcome back to the lecture series on refugee migration diaspora. So, today we are going to discuss transnational lives and identities. So, talking about transnationalism emerged as a significant concept in social sciences during the 1990s, highlighting social relations that transcend national borders. It explores how power dynamics and social inequalities manifest in the contexts that go beyond single nation states. The term transnationalism first appeared in an essay written by Randolph Bourne in the year 1916, where he advocated for a US identity that is rooted in international cosmopolitanism rather than strict assimilation of the migrants into the white American culture. However, this work did not gain widespread recognition until some time. In the subsequent decades, political scientists, specifically Joseph S. Nye and Robert O. Keohane, so Nye and Keohane in the year 1971 promoted the concept of transnationalism in order to shift focus from nation state centric research towards a broader analysis of capital and transnational organizations within the larger scheme of international relations. So, this shift aimed at a better understanding of global dynamics beyond traditional state boundaries. Economists have also employed this term transnationalism since the 1970s, using it to describe corporations which operate across multiple countries while maintaining a primary base in one nation. This multidisciplinary engagement has enriched the understanding of transnationalism, highlighting its relevance in various contexts, from migration and social relations to global economics and political frameworks. So, all we are trying to say, put simply, is that transnationalism as a phenomenon can be approached through different disciplinary lenses, including literature, literary studies of aesthetics, through the lens of economics, through the lens of political science and international relations, and also an emergent field which is called migration studies, right? So, transnationality refers to the characteristics of social phenomena such as families, organizations, and economic flows which exist across borders. Contrarily, transnationalization emphasizes the processes which create and sustain these cross border social connections. The narrower definition of transnationalization focuses on the expansion as well as deepening of social relations and entities which exist across multiple nation states without any centralized headquarter, right? So when we are talking about one referent home, that becomes part of the diaspora studies, whereas when we are talking about transnationalization, it is involving multiple nation states without any central headquarter as such. So it includes transnational families, organizations, as well as social institutions which represent enduring social networks rather than fleeting interactions. These units, be it a family, be it an organization, it could be analyzed at various levels: micro level, macro level, as well as meso level, and they reflect complex and lasting social entanglements. So, in this specific context, we have to understand that transnationalization is distinct from other allied and overlapping concepts, somewhat overlapping concepts, including globalization, cosmopolitanism, as well as diasporization, because it emphasizes the importance of national contexts as reference for understanding transnational phenomena. So, the term transnationalism is grounded in the existence of nation states. It cannot really overlook the entity of the nation. So, transnational relation only makes sense against the backdrop of national boundaries. Transnationalization is often contrasted with the top down approach of corporate and state driven globalization from above, as has been noted by critics Luis Eduardo Guerzino and Michael Peter Smith. So, Guerzino and Smith note that transnationalism is a bottom up process, right? It is not a top down approach of corporate and state driven phenomenon such as globalization. While globalization from above emphasizes the influence of powerful entities such as the multinational corporations as well as governments, transnationalization highlights grassroots social realities and movements. It is more localized, it is more specific and pertaining to people that are on the fringes of the social and economic practices and the social and economic resources. So, this transnational perspective focuses on how everyday individuals and communities navigate, adapt to, and shape transnational connections, thereby fostering social ties and relationships which often emerge from local experiences and identities. So, by examining transnationalization, researchers can gain insights into how these bottom up processes, transnationalization being a bottom up process, how it interacts with larger global forces, revealing a more nuanced understanding of social dynamics in a globalized world. So, transnationalization as pitted against larger schemes of globalization, that actually reveals understanding of a society, a social dynamics in a more well rounded manner. Further, transnationalization challenges ideas of deterritorialization or the diminishing importance of geographical boundaries, thereby asserting that national contexts remain crucial for analysis. So, nation as a category cannot be overlooked, but yet it can be transcended. In order to understand human relationships, dynamics of a given society in its localized context, we both need the category of nation as well as need to understand that the mainland culture is not everything defining the people, especially living in the borderland areas. They have more transnational identifications, transactions, and habits and cultures, as well as they have transnational linguistic proficiencies. So they become something more than only what is offered within the boundaries of a nation. So, transnationalization serves as a counter to methodological nationalism, which posits that national societies should be the primary units of social science research. So, transnationalization actually emphasizes borderland communities and their layered, complex nature of living. The sometimes defies or sometimes becomes something more than the mainland culture, right? Something more complex, more layered than the mainland culture. So, the borderland culture cannot be adequately understood through the prism of something, an approach such as methodological nationalism. By highlighting transnational dynamics, researchers can develop a richer understanding of social interactions which transcend borders while acknowledging the enduring significance of nation states. Like I said, transnationalization and transnationalism as a phenomenon does not reject or does not defy or overlook a nation as an entity. It says that nation as a point of reference is very important only in order to realize how certain practices actually transcend this category or this entity. So, transnational migrants or transmigrants often blur the lines between their regions of origin and arrival, thereby creating a complex hybrid identity that encompasses elements from both places. Importantly, the focus on transnational concepts does not diminish the relevance of nation states. This is what I have been trying to explain several times in this lecture. Rather, transnationalism acknowledges that while nation states continue to shape social lives, they are no longer the only frameworks within which social interactions can occur. So, transnationalism illustrates a more complex social reality where multiple layers of identity and community coexist across the different geographical contexts. In this regard, we note Nina Glick Schiller, Linda Bach, and Christina Blanc Zanton, the three critics, Schiller, Bach, and Zanton, state that, I quote, contemporary immigrants, unlike earlier ones, forge and sustain simultaneous and multi stranded social relations that link together their societies of origin and settlement to the extent that their daily lives depend on multiple and constant interconnections across international borders. Unquote. So, transnational migrants, maintain connections to their countries of origin while also forging new experiences and social ties in their new environments. This sort of duality allows the transnational migrant populace to navigate their lives across different contexts, drawing on diverse resources, cultural practices, and networks. While a nation's direct political control over migration is generally limited, it is an imperative to acknowledge transnational social relations and explore new opportunities for crafting effective national policies pertaining to the migrants, which respect the migrants' multifaceted identities and experiences. So, that kind of policy making on the part of the different nations is very important, where, even the migrants feel, represented and included, as well as their culture, their habits are respected, and they are not simply marginalized and invisibilized. So, by addressing the realities, the baggages, the cultural baggages that the migrants travel that the migrants bring to the host society, the policymakers can create more inclusive and adaptive as well as flexible strategies which support both the migrants and the host communities. Such policies can enhance and facilitate a better lifestyle, a better experience of living for both the migrants as well as the host population. So, theorists like Arjun Appadurai, Nina Glick Schiller, Rainer Bobock, Alejandro Potes, Devin I.G. Khagram, Peggy Levitt, as well as Saskia Sassen, identify both new phenomena and historical trends which actually shape this framework and show how transnationalism captures the complexities of contemporary social, economic, as well as cultural interactions in a globalized world. So, some of the salient features or characteristics associated with transnationalism include a increased flow of goods and labor. So, the growing movement of products, commodities, and workers across borders. Next, global migration. So, the rise in people relocating internationally, which impacts the cultural and social dynamics. Next, we have evolving identity formation. So, once transnational population moves to a new land, to a host country, they often experience complex shifts in their sense of identity, in their sense of belonging, and even their notions of home. All these concepts are kind of complicated, revisited, and problematized. Next, we have the changing role of the nation state. The nation state's influence may be diminishing progressively, as we see in the last several decades. And in certain contexts, we see that it tends to reshape governance and social relations. Another factor associated with transnationalism include global flow structures and institutions. So, various frameworks and organizations facilitate as well as hinder international exchanges. Next, transnationalism is associated with enhanced communication. So, advances in digital media have accelerated the process of sharing of ideas as well as connections across borders, right? And allied with this factor, we have technological advancements, with communication, faster commuting, transportations becoming more sophisticated, and enabling more frequent and easier cross border travel. We see that the world has become a smaller place. The globe has become a smaller place, right? Next factor associated with transnationalism is economic shifts. So, changes in late capitalism and new liberal policies have transformed economic relationships and actors on a global scale. The terms transnational and transnationalism have garnered both support as well as critique from the different scholars. For instance, Michael Smith emphasizes transnational lives over the broader expression transnationalism. Smith prefers to use the expression transnational lives rather than transnationalism, arguing that the latter lacks sufficient explanatory power regarding the diverse influences on individuals' experiences. So, when we add lives, we are adding plurality to this entire phenomenon. So it's not a homogeneous phenomenon. Of course, it is different from with respect to different people coming from different backgrounds. So when we talk of transnational lives, we are taking into consideration this heterogeneity, these dissimilar experiences, right? Smith critiques transnationalism as as a buzzword. So the expression transnationalism, according to Smith, is a buzzword which does not fully capture the complexities of people's lives across borders. Further, Victor Zuniga and Edmund T. Hammond suggest the term sojourners. So they are not even talking about transnationalism, not even transnational lives. They would suggest the term sojourners as a more nuanced descriptor or marker for those that are engaged in transnational activities, practices, indicating thereby a need for terms which better reflect the lived and live experiences and processes involved in activities across the border. Next, we see that Guerzino and Smith highlight how the concept of transnationalism has diversified in its application, leading to increased ambiguity. They note that while transnationalism has gained prominence, its shifting meanings can complicate empirical research and theoretical frameworks. Despite all these critics, many researchers continue to find value in using transnationalism as a term analytical lens. It serves as an important framework for understanding the intricate social, economic, and cultural ties that individuals maintain across national borders, thereby acknowledging the realities of migration, identity, and belonging in a globalized world. Critic Lynn Stiffen introduces the concept of transborder lives in the year 2007, exploring similar themes found in transnational studies, including migration patterns, the diminishing role of the state, as well as the impacts of capitalism on individuals, on groups that are moving their bases from one country to another. So, Stephen focuses on indigenous individuals from two small towns in Oaxaca, Mexico, examining their experiences in California and Oregon. She highlights historical patterns of movements between Mexico and the United States, as well as more recent trends of back and forth migration, where the definition of home is almost not there because the movement or the trajectory is not once and for all. The movement is not with any sort of finality, and there is also this concept of destination being problematized, just like the home blurs. In the same spirit, the concept of destination is also blurring, almost disappearing, right? So there is, rather than reaching a final destination, having any kind of a telocentric movement, it is a back and forth migration. So Stephen's research emphasizes the complexities of her participants' indigeneity, revealing how indigenous Mexicans often face misunderstandings and are perceived as inferior in both the countries, both in Mexico as well as in United States. It's a situation that is rooted in colonial legacies. Additionally, some of her participants engage in political and economic organizing across borders, thereby advocating for improved agricultural working conditions in the US while also supporting community festivals in Mexico. So, there are both these phenomena. On the one hand, a people that are marginalized, that are kind of rendered an inferior status in both the home and the host land. On the other hand, we have participants that are contributing to both the home and the host society. They are supporting festivals back in the homeland, as well as supporting agro based activities in the host land, right? So there can be all these nuances taken into consideration when talking about transnational lives and identities. Transnational studies are evolving within the increasingly globalized and neoliberal context of the world. Scholars argue for the need to refine and specify appropriate categories of analyses in order to better understand transnational phenomena, particularly in relation to social inequalities, power dynamics, as well as collective actors. Future developments in transnational studies would aim for more nuanced perspectives on individuals, communities, as well as multinational interactions in both empirical research as well as theoretical frameworks. By integrating insights from diaspora studies, transnationalism can benefit from critical historical analysis as well as use the diasporic communities as their foundation for understanding transnational processes. What is more, incorporating research from subaltern perspectives and voices can highly enhance the richness of transnational analysis, which would be similar to the approaches that are observable in diaspora studies. So, cross border activism illustrates the resilience and interconnectedness of the subaltern identities and communities, contributing to a richer, a more well rounded understanding of transborder experiences. Peggy Levitt, in her book The Transnational Villages, which came out in 2001, focuses on Miraflores, the Dominican Republic, as well as the New York City, and highlights the collective nature of transnational practices and their deep ties to community life. So, Levitt examines how transmigration impacts the sending community of Miraflores. By sending community, we are referring to the section of population sending remittances back to their homeland, right? And the work notes that it often leads to disruptions and new pressures, such as the desire for more material possessions in newly constructed homes. So, when we are talking about social remittances being sent back to the homeland, to begin with, we are referring to money, but we are also referring to ideas, behaviors, identities, and a social capital that is flowing from receiving to sending country communities, right? So, Levitt's analysis reveals that transnational political organizations in Miraflores frequently align with the interests of wealthier groups in New York, often prioritizing projects such as improved school facilities without necessarily enhancing educational quality. So, talking about the impact of remittances back in a home country, especially if the home country is less developed, which is often the case when there is a capital flow of economic capital, social capital, cultural capital from the host land, which is more developed society, to the homeland. There could be more pressure and disruption rather than benefit as a result of this kind of a flow, this kind of an exchange. Because, as we can understand from the last example I gave, some of the ideas that are flowing from the transnational population, a more sophisticated and affluent population, their ideations may sometimes be impractical, not feasible, and they can leave a very superfluous, superficial influence on the back in the home society. The facilities that are coming through remittances from developed countries may not actually end up benefiting the home society. It may lead to new disruptions and new forms of pressures, because they are not solving the problems of the home country in a more thorough fashion, in a more comprehensive way, as they should. Just bringing some ideas in a superfluous manner, bringing some money superficially, cannot really enhance the quality of lives back in the home country, in the home society. So with this, we come to the end of our lecture today, and let's meet with another round of discussions with a new topic in our next lecture. Thank you.